5 forgotten cities in Australia. These aren't just ghost towns. They're the remains of dreams buried in dust, scattered across Australia's forgotten corners. Built by gold, grit, and promise now left behind like they never existed. In one, the air is so toxic it was wiped from official maps. In another, entire homes stand untouched, as if waiting for someone to return. These are 5 places swallowed by silence, haunted by history, and lost to time. Let's begin. Number 1. Wittenoom. Wittenoom sits on the edge of the Western Australian desert, surrounded by red rock and silence. Once it was a thriving outpost in the middle of nowhere. Today, it's so dangerous that it's been wiped from road signs, maps, and even GPS systems. Originally, Wittenoom was built in the 1940s as a mining town, created to harvest one thing: blue asbestos. At the time, it was considered a miracle material, fireproof, durable, and incredibly profitable. Workers flooded in, families followed, and a full town was carved into the desert to support the booming industry. There were shops, schools, football matches on dusty fields. It felt like the future had arrived, even if it was in the middle of the outback. At its height, over 20,000 people lived and worked in and around Wittenoom. Trains carried asbestos day and night. Dust coated everything. Nobody asked questions. But then people started getting sick, really sick. The downfall came quietly, in the form of coughing fits, strange lung diseases, and a word that no one had heard before: mesothelioma. It turned out that asbestos wasn't just harmful, it was deadly. Entire families were exposed. Over time, Wittenoom became one of the most contaminated places in the Southern Hemisphere. Today, it's almost entirely abandoned. Only a few residents ever refused to leave. The rest and the government walked away. Buildings still stand, but nature is slowly reclaiming everything. Signs warn travelers not to enter. Breathing the air here can kill you. And here's the twist: the land is still privately owned. Tourists still sneak in. Some take photos, others take souvenirs, not realizing they're bringing poison back home in the dust on their boots. Even now, decades later, Wittenoom isn't just abandoned, it's actively dangerous. And it's a ghost town that Australia is trying to erase, one deadly breath at a time. Number 2. Silverton. Silverton feels like a mirage. Just beyond the edge of Broken Hill, in the scorched far west of New South Wales, it rises from the desert like a forgotten movie set. Faded buildings, rusting cars, and a single dusty pub. It looks abandoned, but isn't quite. Originally, Silverton was born from silver. In the 1880s, prospectors arrived, chasing wealth buried deep in the rock, and the town exploded almost overnight. At its peak, there were over 3,000 people living there: miners, traders, families, all drawn to the promise of fortune. The peak of Silverton's life came fast and fierce. The mines were rich, the saloons full, and there was even a newspaper, courthouse, and several churches. But just as quickly as it rose, it started to collapse. The richer lodes were found further east, and people began moving to Broken Hill. The decline wasn't dramatic. It was more like a slow fading. Buildings were dismantled and carried away. The town emptied out until only a handful remained. The wind carried dust where crowds once stood. Today, Silverton has around 50 residents. But here's where it gets strange. While the town died, its image lived on. Directors discovered Silverton's eerie beauty. Films like Mad Max 2 and Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, were shot here. The buildings became backdrops. The silence became a script. Tourists started arriving to stand where actors once stood. And here's the twist. While it looks abandoned, Silverton has become a different kind of living thing. It's part ghost town, part art installation, part cinema relic. Inside the old Gale, there's a quirky museum. A rusty VW Beetle, covered in paint and doll heads, sits out front. In Silverton, you don't just walk through history, you walk through someone's imagination. It's a ghost town that never fully died. It just changed costume. Number 3. Gwalia. Gwalia lies in the middle of Western Australia's goldfields, surrounded by miles of emptiness and desert wind. It's a place where time didn't just stop, it froze mid-step. Originally, Gwalia was built in the 1890s to support the Sons of Gwalia gold mine, one of the richest in the country. Workers came from all over Italy, Yugoslavia, Britain, to dig deep into the red earth. The town grew fast, but it wasn't glamorous. Homes were made of tin and hessian sacks. There was no running water, no luxury, only hard labor and gold fever. The town's peak came in the early 20th century, when the mine employed over 1,000 people. Shops, bakeries, a hotel, everything a frontier town needed. Even the future U.S. President, Herbert Hoover, worked there as a young mining engineer. But nothing gold lasts forever. The downfall came suddenly in 1963. The mine shut down with just 1 day's notice. No warning, no transition. In less than 48 hours, hundreds of residents packed up and left. Plates were still on tables, beds still made. It was as if the town had been paused mid-breath. Today, Gwalia is one of the most perfectly preserved ghost towns in Australia. Many of the original buildings still stand. The general store, the miners' cottages, the old telephone exchange, all restored but left authentic. It feels like someone might walk out of a doorway at any moment, but no one ever does. And here's the twist. The town is so untouched that it now runs as a living museum. But the eeriest part? Some of the homes have glass walls installed, so you can peer into the exact moment when life ended. You see old coats still hanging, teacups still resting on counters. Gwalia isn't just abandoned, it's staged like a time capsule. It doesn't decay, it remembers. Number 4. Farina. Farina lies hidden deep in the South Australian outback, surrounded by scorched plains and heat-shimmering skies. From a distance, it looks like nothing, just a pile of old stone ruins crumbling under the sun. But look closer, and you'll see signs of life. A bakery, rebuilt from rubble. A campsite buzzing with voices. Originally, Farina was founded in the 1870s by optimistic settlers who believed wrongly that the area would support farming. The name itself means flower in Latin, a nod to their dreams of growing wheat in the desert. It became a railway hub and supply town, with pubs, shops, a school, and its own underground bakery to escape the heat. The town's height came in the early 1900s, when the railway reached full speed and travelers poured through. Farina stood proud in the middle of nowhere, a symbol of determination and frontier grit. But nature had other plans. The decline began with a cruel twist. The rains never came. Farming failed. Dust storms returned. The train line was eventually rerouted, and by the 1960s, the town was almost completely empty. Buildings collapsed, roofs vanished. It became just another forgotten speck on the map. But today, Farina is different. Every winter, a group of volunteers arrives from across Australia to restore the ruins, stone by stone. They sleep in tents, mix mortar by hand, and slowly rebuild the town that time tried to erase. The bakery now operates for 8 weeks each year. Tourists can buy fresh bread baked underground, just like a century ago. And here's the twist. Farina isn't just a ghost town anymore. It's a resurrection in progress, a reminder that some stories don't end in silence. They end in people returning, not to live, but to remember, repair, and keep the memory breathing, one brick at a time. Number 5. Joadja. Joadja sits hidden in a narrow valley in New South Wales, surrounded by steep sandstone cliffs and thick bushland. Blink and you'd miss the winding road that leads to it. Follow it and you'll find a place that looks frozen in time, not from decay, but from something stranger. Originally, Joadja was built in the late 1800s as an oil shale mining town. Its purpose was clear: extract kerosene and paraffin from the earth to fuel lamps and machines across the colonies. Scottish immigrants were brought in for their expertise, and the town grew quickly, sealed off by geography and industry. Homes, a school, a store, and even a theater appeared, all cut from stone. At its peak, Joadja was completely self-contained. It had its own cable railway, orchards, post office, and even a cemetery tucked quietly into the hillside. But its isolation was also its curse. The shale was hard to reach, hard to transport, and as new fuels emerged, demand for Joadja's product vanished. The downfall came slowly. By 1911, the mines had closed, and with no industry to support it, the town emptied. The bush crept back in. Vines tangled around chimneys. The railway vanished beneath dust and scrub. Joadja disappeared, almost entirely. Today, what's left feels like a movie set left behind after filming stopped. The stone buildings still stand, eerily intact. You can walk through workshops where tools still sit on benches. Peer into homes where wallpaper clings to the walls. Visit the schoolroom, desks still in place, as if the children just stepped outside. And here's the twist. Joadja is one of the only ghost towns in Australia where so much remains untouched. It isn't falling down, it's just waiting. Protected by its remote valley, it feels like the past never left. And when you stand there alone, silent, surrounded by stone, it doesn't feel like you're visiting history. It feels like history is watching you back. Some of these places were erased for safety. Others were simply forgotten, left behind when the world moved on. But each one carries a different kind of silence, heavy, watchful, and impossible to ignore. And maybe that's the strangest part. Ghost towns don't just vanish. They wait, quietly, until someone comes looking. If you liked what you saw, drop a like and subscribe so you won't miss what's coming next.